Hey friends, have you ever wondered what your purpose in life is? Have you struggled to figure out the big questions like what career to choose, who to marry, where should I go to school, things like that? Well, in this video, I'm going to uncover a way for you to move forward if you have these questions. Here's the harsh reality. Everyone is going through a struggle with questions of discernment. But if you are a person who is Christian or you have a faith, it's even harder because we believe that God has a particular purpose for us. And so what we have to do is contend with what do I want in my life and well, what does God want for me? And this can sometimes create a problem and make it harder because we're not always sure if what I want is what God wants. And it's not like when I read the Bible, I'm going to find a passage that says, hey, Boris Borisov, that guy, born in 1987, I want you to be a pastor. There's nothing like that in the Bible. We're not going to get a specific blueprint of like, this is what you should do in life. And it doesn't help that if you're in the church for years, you've heard this cliche that God has a wonderful plan for your life. Like, if he did, why not just give it to me? Because I haven't seen it yet. To be sure, I do believe that God has a plan for us. The plan is actually for us to be dependent on God and to become like his son, Jesus Christ. The plan is for us to be holy. It's to give us free choice to try things in life, to make choices like where to work, who to marry, things like that. Sometimes God even allows us to make errors, and through those errors, he shapes and forms us. Here's the unfortunate reality. For most of human history, people have suffered greatly and lived really short lives of hardship. It's literally like in the last 10 minutes, historically speaking, sort of our post-industrial revolution age, that we've attained this very high standard of living where we can sit around and think, hey, what is my purpose in life? For most of human history, it was just about survival. But now, with higher quality of life, we have more time to think about discernment. What does God want for me? And so in this video, I'm going to give you 3 lenses of how to look at your life to grow closer to where God is calling you. First, before we get into it, a lot of these ideas come from the book Catching Fire, Becoming Flame by Albert Haas. Link in the description below. So let's cover the basics. What does discernment even mean? Well, discernment requires separating off, distinguishing, and sifting away. It's figuring out what works for you and what doesn't work for your life. Sometimes we have to even sift away good ideas because they're not exactly how we're wired. When I was a kid, my dad made us plant an orchard. And every year, I remember we would pick the fruit and we'd have to discern between bad fruit and good fruit. Some fruit would be damaged by bugs and insects, and we would have to throw them in the compost pile. And then the good fruit we would take for ourselves to make jam, to put away, to give away, things like that. And I think sometimes in our lives, we have things that seem damaged, but even those damaged things can go onto sort of the compost, if you will, and then become fertile ground for our lives. The big problem is most people want to hear a voice from heaven, like, be a doctor, be an attorney, and we struggle. And the funny thing is, no one imagines God saying, hey, son, I think you should be a janitor for the rest of your life. Here's the secret. If you want to discern God's call in your life, don't stick your heads just in the clouds and look for a voice. Put your ear to the ground and listen to your life. God actually uses your life as a megaphone to give you clues in 3 specific areas. Number 1, the people around you. What are your best friends, your most trusted people saying about you? Those who know you best. Ask them, what do you see in my life? Where are my skills? Where are my talents? What am I good at? I remember when I first came to Christ, I was in my youth group, and I remember sitting at the front row saying, I will do anything for God, but I will never preach. And then my youth pastor said, hey, next Sunday, I want you to prepare a short sermon, 10 minutes to go at the beginning of the service. I said, there is no way I'm doing that. I can't do this. But this person, this youth pastor, saw in me the potential to preach. And because he was Slavic, he didn't give me this American choice. I was like, I'm not doing it. He's like, hey, bro, I didn't ask you if you wanted to do it. I'm putting you on the schedule. Next week comes, your name is going to be called. You can come out there and look like an idiot, unprepared, or you can go prepare. And I'll never forget how nervous, how shocked I was that I had to prepare a sermon. And it was a quite big church back then, about 1,000 people in the audience. I remember walking up to the front. I only had 10 minutes and I stumbled my way through the sermon, but it actually was okay. It was decent. And that decision by my youth pastor to put me in the spotlight uncovered a gift that needed to be developed. And here I am sitting 20 years later, over 300 sermons delivered, and starting a church plant. The thing that I thought I wouldn't do, I couldn't do, was exactly what I was created to do. So combine what people are saying with this next lens, and you're going to skyrocket in your discernment process. So number 2, listen to the current obligations and circumstances in your life. Here's what I mean by that. What is your current season in life? What are your covenantal responsibilities? Meaning, God would never tell you, you know what, you should leave your spouse and go on a missionary trip to a different country, because you have a covenant with your wife to be her husband, if you will. This is your primary job. Also, God would not say, hey, I want you to volunteer every single night at the church and not have any time for your kids. No, as a father, your number one job is to raise your children in the Lord. So God isn't going to ask us to do a bunch of stuff that negates our covenant obligations and responsibilities. In fact, if you want to be a church leader, one of the highest qualifications in the New Testament, it says that you must be able to lead your household well, because what business does a person who cannot lead their household have leading the house of God? So, number 1, people. Number 2, what are your obligations and circumstances in life? More importantly, you might be in a position right now in life, maybe you have a career that you don't love, that doesn't quite match what you think God is calling you to. That's okay. It's actually, if that's not your final calling or your ultimate calling, even the wrong job that doesn't fit you, God can use as training ground to get you prepared for the future. This is a journey, not a one-year thing. My personal stories, it took me 12 years to become a pastor. Deep down, I knew I would be in the pastoral world, but I first became a city planner where I helped cities and neighborhoods plan for their future. And I was wondering, when will God make that shift? And even there, I remember we were low on money and I took a 2-year gig in a different department doing code enforcement. It was the wrong job for me. It was not me. I loved the people, but I hated the job. So my job was to go and take care of all the drug houses in the city and all of the abandoned houses, and to bring lawsuits against the landlords and say, hey, you have to clean up your property. So every week I'd go out on these site visits and people would come at me from the houses, sometimes threaten my life with physical harm. And I remember hating being yelled at and cursed at, and then going to these summits or these judicial proceedings where I'd have to present evidence against these people and they would counter sue me. This was not for me long term. I took the job because I thought I could make more money and figured out this is not where God wanted me. Nevertheless, inside of that job that caused my anxiety to spike, caused me to lose all of my hair, I grew a very thick skin. And now that I'm in my pastoral role, I realize that those 2 years were the years that made me the strongest and prepared me for pastoral ministry. Because guess what? As a pastor, you get yelled at a lot too. And thanks to those 2 years, I've been able to grow a defensive mechanism against it and a way to deal with conflict with grace. So it wasn't my long-term thing, but it was not wasted. So if you're in a position that you feel isn't quite you, God's not done with you. He can work through it to shape you. So listen to the people, listen to the circumstances and obligations, but then if you combine it with this third piece, you'll really find your call. Listen to your talents and your passions. What do you love to do? God actually uses our feelings to guide us into His will. Now, there's a difference between desires and feelings. Desires can be sinful. And the Bible does tell us that when we become Christians, we are to fight our old nature desires. But in our new creation, God actually uses our feelings to guide us towards how we are wired. So if you feel a pastoral call, if you feel a counseling call, if you feel like you're really good at administration and you should start a business or run that Fortune 500 company, that could be a cue from God that that's what you're wired to do. So one way to look at it is your passions are things that you can do that are productive and useful for society and other people, and that you love it so much that you lose track of time. Have you ever experienced that you've done something? Maybe it's art, maybe it's writing, maybe it's reading, maybe it's managing something where it's so fun for you that you lose track of time. That's a good indicator that that's a passion and a talent. And again, sometimes it takes years to figure out what that is. And sometimes you incorporate pieces of that passion into your current role. So here's an example. When I was young, I loved making movies. I had a mini DV camera and we would shoot all these funny films for our youth group. And I was a kid, but I loved directing, filming, shooting, editing. Well, fast forward 15 years later, and I still love shooting and editing, but I preach for a living. So this year I thought about it, I prayed about it, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I combine my preaching abilities with video editing and start a YouTube channel to talk about the things I hear about as a pastor? Now, will it be like this huge, massive success? I actually don't know. But frankly, that's not the point. The point is I'm trying out new things and I'm combining my passions with my role and my call in life. And I'm saying, Lord, even if I just get one person to become a closer Jesus follower or one person to find faith, that's good enough for me. We'll just keep going. So here's the most important thing. God's ultimate plan for you and I isn't that we have massive success. It's that we are conformed to the image of his son. God will use our marriages, our circumstances, our careers to shape us. Our job is to try to find how we are best wired and match opportunities in this world as best as we can. But even if we don't, comparatively speaking, our life is so short and quick compared to eternity. So if your dreams aren't fully fulfilled here, if you feel like you're running out of time, don't worry. If you are being conformed to the image of Jesus, you're on the right track. Because when this life goes away, whatever we become in Jesus will remain. I have a really good friend who's originally from the former Soviet Union. And over there, he was a respected part of the intellectual class. He worked in the sciences. And after the country collapsed, he came here as this middle-aged person. He was too old to pursue a new career. And the credentials from that old country didn't transfer here, so he couldn't become anybody. And so he took a job as a janitor. But he's one of the happiest people that I know. He works hard and he uses employment at the university to put his kids through college tuition free. He serves at the church and he contributes to the American economy. Does he have his dream job? No. That dream died when circumstances out of his control, the collapse of a country he was part of, ruined all of his hard work. But because his identity is in Jesus Christ, not his career, maybe he's sad that he lost some status, but it did not crush him. So I want to encourage you, if you want to find God's plan for your life, listen to these three voices: the people around you, the circumstances and obligations that you're in, and your passions and your talents. And if your dreams don't work out because of some circumstance outside of your control, maybe a sickness, a bankruptcy, collapse of a country, or an economy, remember, God's plan for you is holiness. And if you abide in Jesus, you can't miss that part of God's plan. So, what about you? How do you discern God's call in your life? Share some examples down in the comments below. If you leave a comment, I'll pick my favorite one and send you a free copy of this book, Catching Fire, Becoming Flame, as a way to boost some conversation. If you like this video, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.